and welcome to Neo Psychology with me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach online psychology lessons for my wonderful students. Today we're carrying on the Psychopathology unit and we're looking at Lesson 8, the cognitive approach to explaining depression. Let's do this! You're walking down Kingston High Street and you see someone you know from school. You wave at them, but they don't respond. They walk right past you. What are you thinking? Now, depending on the type of person you are, depends on what you might think. Okay? Someone that thinks more positively might be like, maybe they were busy, maybe they didn't see me, I'm sure they probably got their own thing going on, I'm sure it's nothing that I've done, I'm sure it's not a problem, right? Someone that thinks more negatively, they might go, maybe I've done something to offend them. Maybe they're annoyed at me. Maybe they're annoyed at this thing I did. Oh, well, why don't they like me? Why don't they think they're friends with me? Oh, I'm really upset by this, and I really don't like them. Maybe I'll shout something at them, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just go home and be really sad for the rest of the day. Okay? So depending on your approach, depends on how you may deal with that situation. So here we are on the psychopathology unit so far. We've defined... we had a look at the definition of abnormality. We had a look at phobias, depression, and OCD. We had a look at the whole of the behavioral approach to explaining and treating phobias. And we are now here. We are looking at the cognitive approach to explaining depression. Okay, so there are two explanations for depression that we're going to look at today. Beck's cognitive theory of depression and Ellis's ABC model. Let's start with Beck. One approach to explaining the development of depression is based on the cognitive approach. In particular, we are interested in how depression involves negative patterns of thinking and other cognitive processes such as schema. So, 3 learning objectives today. Show comprehension and apply knowledge of Beck's cognitive theory of depression. Learning objective 2, show comprehension and apply knowledge of Ellis's ABC model. And then learning objective 3, to be able to discuss and evaluate Beck and Ellis's theory of depression. Let's start with learning objective 1. Beck's cognitive theory of depression. American psychiatrist Aaron Beck in 1967 suggested a cognitive approach to explaining why some people are more vulnerable to depression than others. In particular, it is a person's cognitions that create this vulnerability, i.e. the way we think. So according to Beck and this cognitive theory, he's saying some people that think in certain ways are more vulnerable to get depression, okay? Cognition, it's all about thinking. So Beck suggested 2 parts to this cognitive vulnerability. Negative self-schemas and the negative triad. So, negative self-schemas. When depressed, we attend to the negative aspects of a situation and ignore the positives. For example, if I was depressed and I won £1 million on the lottery, I might focus on the fact that the previous week someone had won 10 million, rather than focus on the positive of all I could do with the 1 million. We also tend to blow small problems out of proportion and think in black and white terms known as absolutist thinking. Okay? So it's dwelling on the negative. Now, what is a schema? We should have learnt this from the approaches unit. A schema is a package of information, right? A package of ideas and information developed through experience. They act as a mental framework for the interpretation of sensory information. A self-schema is the package of information we have about ourselves. We use schemas to interpret the world. So if we have a negative self-schema, we interpret all information about ourselves in a negative way. And this brings us on to the negative triad. A person develops a dysfunctional view of themselves because of 3 types of negative thinking that occurs automatically, regardless of the reality of what is happening at the time. So Beck's cognitive theory of depression focuses on these 3 elements that we call the negative triad. We are depressed. When we are depressed, we have negative thoughts about the world, negative thoughts about the future, and negative thoughts about oneself. Okay? So, the negative triad, negative view of the world. For example, you might have the view that the world is a cold, hard place, okay? Everything's awful in the world, okay? Everyone's out for money. This is all about consumerism. This creates the impression that there is no hope anywhere. Negative view of the future. An example of this would be that there isn't much chance that the economy will get much better, alright? Oh, the world is absolutely burning down, global warming, we're all going to be dead in the next 50 years, right? Such thoughts reduce any hopefulness and enhance depression. And negative views of the self, okay? For example, I might think that I'm a failure. You're a failure. You never do anything right. What's the point in anything, right? You're not going to do well. Stop trying hard, alright? Such thoughts enhance any existing depressive feelings because they conform the existing emotions of low self-esteem. And that's the negative triad, okay? Negative way of thinking makes you more vulnerable to depression, okay? That's not crazy. That's what you would expect, okay? This is Beck's cognitive theory of depression. So, the negative triad. What did Beck propose? Beck proposed that there were three kinds of what thinking? Three kinds of, which word is it? Negative thinking that contribute to becoming depressed or making you more vulnerable to depression, okay? Negative views of the world, negative views about the future, and negative views of the self, okay? Such negative views lead a person to interpret their experiences in a negative way and so make them more vulnerable to depression. So according to Beck, it's all about your schema. It's all about your self-schema and the way you interpret things. So if you think about the example in the starter, someone that might think more negatively and thought the reason why the person walked past me and ignored me and thought in a more negative way is because something bad happened or because I did something or because they're offended or because I'm a horrible person, that person is more vulnerable to depression compared to the other person that might think of it as, I'm sure it's their own problem they've got going on. Maybe they didn't see me. Maybe there's a more rational explanation to this. Okay? So, discussion. The negative triad. Use Beck's negative triad to explain the possible thought process of or negative view of the world, the future, and the self each individual may have. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of them. If I do number 1 with us, and you can do number 2 and 3, okay? Number 1, Sam got an average mark in a maths test, okay? If he was to have a negative thoughts about the world, he might say, the world is out to get me. The teacher hates me. She marked my thing wrong on purpose because she thinks I'm terrible. This is so unfair. The world's unfair. I revised and only the stuff that I didn't revise came up in the test. The world is so unfair. That would be negative views about the world. Okay? Negative views about the future. Because I only got an average grade in this test, I'm not going to get a very high predicted grade. Therefore, I'm not going to get into the university I want. I'm not going to get the job I want. I'm not going to find the partner that I deserve. I'm not going to have kids. I'm going to end up alone, on my own, without a job, without a partner, without kids. The future looks awful. Okay? And then you might have negative views of yourself. Okay? The reason I didn't do well is because I'm a failure, because I'm stupid, I'm so dumb. Why can't I be more smart? Why can't I be more like my brother? He passes everything. He does everything so easily. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a failure. Okay? Having the negative triad, the negative faulty way of thinking makes you more vulnerable to depression. And that is Beck's cognitive theory of depression. Have a look at the next two about Lewis and Rick. How might they have the negative views of the world, self, and future? Okay. Here's an application question for us. Okay? The cognitive approach. The cognitive approach to understanding depression emerged in the 1960s as psychologists in general changed their emphasis from studying observable behavior, so behaviorism, to studying mental processes. Okay? It was around the 40s and 50s when we had this behaviorism, this learning theory, okay? You know, Pavlov's classical conditioning, Skinner's operant conditioning, and we looked at the world through behaviorism, and then we started to look at the world through a more cognitive perspective. In the 1960s. The cognitive approach to depression is more concerned with explaining the kinds of thinking and selective attention that characterize depression. The approach does not ignore emotion and behavior, but it sees them as the result of cognition. So, explain in what way Beck's cognitive theory of depression involves thinking and information processing. It's not an easy question, give it a go. Right. Pause the video, write down your answer, and then test it to see if it's incomparable to this answer here, okay? The cognitive approach is concerned with thinking and information processing. Beck took account of both of these in his model of depression. He spoke of faulty information processing in depressed people who selectively attend to negative aspects of a situation. He also spoke of negative automatic thinking in the form of his negative triad, okay? And that is Beck's cognitive theory of depression. Identify one thing that you learned. Why do you think learning about this is important? How does this apply in real life? Who is this information useful to? What questions has this raised for you? Okay, this is important for everyone. Lots of people suffer from depression. Depression is the common cold of mental illness. If you understand your depression better, then maybe it will help you get over it better. Okay, it'll give you ways in which you can learn to adapt and maybe think less negatively. And that was Beck's cognitive theory of depression. Right? We're now going to move on to Ellis's ABC model. Okay? Show comprehension and apply knowledge of Ellis's ABC model. Let's have a look at that one. Another American psychiatrist, Albert Ellis, in 1962, suggested a different cognitive explanation of depression. He proposed that good mental health is the result of rational thinking, defined as thinking in ways that allows people to be happy and free of pain. Now remember, both of them are American psychiatrists, both of them were around in the 60s, both of them come from this cognitive approach. So these theories, they are similar. They're not different, they are quite similar, okay? But Ellis has proposed that good mental health is the result of rational thinking, okay? And irrational thinking is any thinking that causes you pain and makes you feel sad, okay? So rational thinking is thinking that makes you happy and makes you free of pain. So to Ellis, conditions like anxiety and depression, poor mental health, result from irrational thinking, irrational thoughts. Ellis defined irrational thoughts not as illogical or unrealistic, but as any thoughts that interfere with us being happy or free of pain. So if your thinking causes you pain, it's irrational. Now, Ellis used an ABC model to explain how irrational thoughts affect our behavior and emotional state. ABC. A is the activating event, B is the belief, and C is the consequences of depression. So let's start. A, activating event. Whereas Beck's emphasis was on automatic thoughts, Ellis focused on situations in which irrational thoughts are triggered by external events. According to Ellis, we get depressed when we experience negative events, and these trigger irrational beliefs, and events like getting fired from work might trigger irrational beliefs. So the first stage in the ABC model is the activating event. There's an event that activates these beliefs, okay? So it could be getting fired from work. It could be seeing your friend ignoring you in the street. It could be getting a bad grade in one of your exams, okay? This activating event causes certain beliefs, and that brings us on to B, beliefs. Ellis identified a range of irrational beliefs. He called the belief that we must always succeed or achieve perfection as masturbation. Okay, you must succeed, you must be perfect, you must always do well. And this was masturbatory thinking, masturbation. Okay, irrational beliefs for the activating event may include, I was sacked because the company had it in for me, rather than the company was overstaffed. Okay, so this idea that you must do well. Okay, the reason I got a bad grade was because the teacher had it out for me, okay? Or I must do well. I can't believe I didn't do well in this, okay? These are masturbatory thinking, right? And that is beliefs, right? And that brings us on to C, consequences. When an activating event triggers irrational beliefs, there are emotional and behavioral consequences. For example, if you believe you must always succeed, and then fail at something, this can trigger depression. Irrational beliefs lead to unhealthy emotions like depression. Okay, get the definition of the ABC model down, please, okay? Who proposed it? Who proposed this model? It was Ellis. Ellis proposed that depression occurs when an what event? A, an activating event, triggers an irrational what? An irrational belief, which in turn produces a consequence, i.e. an emotional response like depression. Okay? The key to this process is the irrational belief. Can you draw an image to illustrate the key term, the ABC model? Okay? So according to Ellis, again from the cognitive perspective, there is an activating event in life, and that triggers those irrational beliefs that you must always do well. And then if it's more negative, then it will result in the consequence of depression. We got an application question now. Yasmin. Yasmin has just been made redundant. She takes this very hard and finds herself suffering symptoms of depression. When questioned, Yasmin says that the situation is unfair and that she is ashamed. 3 questions here. 1, how would you put this sequence of events into the ABC model? 2, in terms of Ellis's theory, what kind of irrational thinking is Yasmin displaying? And then 3, does Yasmin have any symptoms that Ellis's model would struggle to explain? Give those a go now, please. Let's go through the answers. How would you put this sequence of events into the ABC model? A, the activated event is her being made redundant. B is her beliefs of unfairness and shame. And then C, the consequence is depression. In terms of Ellis's theory, what kind of irrational thinking is Yasmin displaying? Yasmin appears to be employing masturbation, which would explain her shame, okay? Why you must always do well. And then finally, does Yasmin have any symptoms that Ellis's approach would struggle to explain? No, Yasmin is a textbook case for Ellis's model. And that is Ellis's ABC model. Done. We're moving on to the final learning objective today, to be able to discuss and evaluate Beck's cognitive theory of depression. Okay, what are some of the strengths and limitations of the cognitive approach to explaining depression? First of all, it has practical application in CBT. A strength of Beck's cognitive explanation is that it forms the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. All cognitive aspects of depression can be identified and challenged in CBT. These include the components of the negative triad that are easily identifiable. This means a therapist can challenge them and encourage the patient to test whether they are true. This is a strength of the explanation because it translates well into a successful therapy. Okay, we're going to find out a little bit more about CBT next lesson. It doesn't explain all aspects of depression though. Beck's theory explains neatly the basic symptoms of depression. However, depression is complex. Some depressed patients are deeply angry, and Beck cannot easily explain this extreme emotion. Some sufferers of depression suffer hallucinations and bizarre beliefs. Beck's theory cannot easily explain these cases. So it doesn't explain all aspects of more extreme depression. And then finally, it's only a partial explanation. There is no doubt that some cases of depression follow activating events, okay, from Ellis's ABC model. Psychologists call this reactive depression and see it as a different from the kind of depression that arises without an obvious cause. This means that Ellis's explanation only applies to some kinds of depression and is therefore only a partial explanation for depression. There are some people that have depression and it hasn't been caused by any specific activating event. They just have it. It's just developed very slowly over time over no particular reason. Finally, it has a practical application in CBT. A strength of Ellis's explanation is that, like Beck's explanation, it has led to a successful therapy. The idea that by challenging irrational negative beliefs, a person can reduce their depression is supported by research. Lipsky et al. In 1980. This in turn supports the basic theory because it just suggests that the irrational beliefs had some role in the depression. So, if we use this understanding to create a therapy, a cognitive behavioral therapy, and then challenging those irrational beliefs actually helps the individual, then it gives a validity to the fact that, yeah, it is this irrational negative way of thinking or these negative beliefs that cause the depression. So there's a strength. Okay, can you summarize each evaluative point into exactly 10 words for us, please? 10 words, give it a go now. And that is the evaluation. I'm ticking it off. To be able to discuss and evaluate Beck's cognitive theory of depression, yes, we've done it. Let's move on to the plenary now. Watch this video on the signs of major depressive disorder.
Sydney, are you feeling okay? You seem a little off at work lately. You missed a couple meetings last week. What's going on?
To be honest, Jan, I'm kind of struggling right now. For the past month, I've had this sad, hopeless feeling, and I'm tired all the time. I also just don't have any energy throughout the day and can't concentrate. I don't feel like doing anything anymore.
Did you know that we have access to licensed clinicians as part of our benefits package? Maybe they can help you get back on track.
Really? I didn't know that. I will definitely check it out. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder a few years back and was afraid I was beginning to have a return of an episode. When I met with my doctor, I talked about the issues I've been having at work, like not being able to concentrate on what was in front of me and problems remembering things. He told me that I may be experiencing the cognitive symptoms of MDD.
The cognitive symptoms of MDD can include having difficulty paying attention or concentrating, or remembering people, words, events, or experiences. It can also include forgetting a planned task or action or planning and organizing your day. Talk to your doctor about any or all symptoms you may be experiencing.
Some days I sit at my desk and I can't remember what I'm working on or what time my next meeting is. My doctor explained that even when many symptoms have improved, about 45% of people diagnosed with MDD may continue to experience cognitive symptoms.
Along with treatment for the emotional and physical symptoms of MDD, your doctor may recommend treatment steps to address cognitive symptoms. There are a number of things you can do to help in your recovery from the cognitive symptoms of MDD. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, has been shown to reduce the cognitive symptoms of MDD. Your cognitive functions can be strengthened through learning and memory exercises and games, and engage in regular exercises directed by your doctor. Alongside improving mood, exercise may help with memory, processing speed, and attention.
I've been doing better at work lately, and my boss has noticed as well. My concentration has improved, and it's made me feel more optimistic and organized at work. I'm taking the medication my doctor prescribed, and with the additional tools my clinician gave me, I'm managing the cognitive symptoms of my MDD better.
And that was lesson 8, the cognitive approach to explaining depression. Next lesson is lesson 9, the cognitive approach to treating depression. And there we go. Well done, my neo-psychologists. Great work today. I've been Mr. Neo. God bless and peace.
I'm feeling like Will. I feel like a prince. I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills, cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels. I wanted to flex, they told me to chill. I'm making a flip. My life is a flick, now load up the film.